Hey everybody, Resident Loser Jeremy here, doing something a little different. Got a top-down shot this time because I want to show you some stuff. I'm using my iPhone as the top-down and I have my camera. I can see it on my watch, which is the coolest thing, I think. So let me know how this is working. I got one of the coolest messages when the president of Lauten Audio reached out to me on Instagram just asking if I wanted to talk. Lauten, I've learned, pretty small family-owned company doing some really interesting stuff in the products world. He was asking me what types of things that I tend to like to use around the studio, and I mentioned I like to solve problems. I am so much about the source tone that mics do come into play, yes, but it's more about how I can use a mic to my benefit. And he had some ideas just from that conversation and wanted to send me some stuff. I like big, bombastic drums. And there are definitely those sounds that I grew up with. Foo Fighters, for example. And as it turns out, I didn't know this when we had initially talked, but some of the mics that I got sent were actually used on those records. And I think the ones that'll surprise you the most are actually the cheapest ones.
No, that's okay. I think we're fine.
First off, let me start by saying toms are hard to get right. 421 is that classic sound that we all know and love. It's a sound that we can all recognize really, really quickly. Sometimes you just want a little bit more control out of those toms. So what do you reach for? That's where Lauten came in. Now they have no control over the video that I'm making, but you should know that they did send me all these mics for free. That said, I would 100% purchase them. And I think I'm planning to get a few more. This right here is the LS308. This is one of the weirdest form factors of any mic I've ever used. They have a crazy tight pickup pattern. What they're meant to do is reject any bleed around them and just be a laser as far as what you're trying to focus on. When I first got these, I put them through probably one of the biggest torture tests that you could put a mic like this on. I used the stereo pair of the two of these to record grand piano live on a stage right next to a drum set. A big 9-foot grand with these, and they sounded, it was one of my favorite piano live sounds that I'd ever gotten, and especially in an environment like that. I could mic it up with a little bit of a better, more control if there was nothing else on stage with that piano. But the full range that I got with this, and because it's so laser focused, you're able to put two of these in a piano and there's very little phase issues going on. I found it very easy to stereo mic something with this. On toms, you'll see with Luke, I had his ride this close to this thing. There was less than an inch of distance between this mic and his ride cymbal, and you can still hear the tom clearly. Past that, we have high pass and low pass on the mic. You can literally get it wherever you want. And what I did find, you have to be very careful about placing this. And if you overshoot the point of attack on the tom, it's just about perfect. And then using proximity effect to get as much boom out of that thing as you want, crazy. But if you listen to the last few Foo Fighter records, these are what they used. And I understand why, and having gone back and forth and listened to them, you can tell. I definitely started with my old tried and true on snare. This is a Grinelli 57. Grinelli just meaning it has the elbow in it. I installed that. I did take the transformer out of this, so it's much lower output than a normal 57, a little more bottom end. Think of it more like a SM7. This helps me maneuver this thing into positions that are really difficult for a standard 57. Think really close to the hi-hat. In that rejection point, I don't have to worry about the rest of the mic coming off, plus the cable. Now it's all down here, and I can really maneuver this into tight spaces and get the best out of that rejection. And I stacked this up against that, the 208. This thing is killer. Trying it out when I first got it, I was singing scratch vocals in front of my studio monitors, just like this. It was a track that I ended up being able to use in the record. It rejected the monitors that much, and I wasn't being careful about it. I thought it was a scratch, and it was just a mic that I had close, so I used it. That's what sold me on this thing. They're so laser focused. Super useful high pass, low pass on these things. But the one that surprised me, and those are awesome, don't get me wrong, they're great. I will link to them down below, and you should definitely reach out to Lauten if you have any questions, because these are awesome. But the ones that really surprised me, is that a small diaphragm condenser in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me? The ones that really surprised me were these LA-120s. Again, high pass, low pass, insanely useful. I tossed these up on my overheads, not really expecting much. Because I definitely let their price point get in the way, is that on the session right before, I literally had about 20 times the cost hanging over the drum set and overheads. And it sounded great. Of course it did. It cost 20 times as much, around $11,000. So I did not have high hopes for these. If there's ever been a mic that's like truly surprised me, it's this. If you told me these are 4 or 5 times their cost, I would completely understand. These are $4.99 for the pair. Stereo picture on these things is vividly clear. And the weird thing about it, when you're hanging it over a drum kit, one thing that translates was not just the left and right, but the height. I feel like I could tell depth. I'd never really experienced that with another mic, but when he went to a ride, I felt his hand drop. I'm not sure if it's a combination of all of these things, having rejection to the point of being focused on what they're focused on and not getting phase weird with other mics. I don't really know what that is, but they offered a very flattering picture of the kit. And even if you were using other mics, whether I was using the 57 or the 208 on the snare, these things really shined. Honestly, for $4.99, for 2 of these mics, this is one of my must-haves if you're looking for overhead mics. There's nothing that comes close in the price point that I've tried. On top of sounding great, having a low pass on an overhead mic is not something that I thought I would like as much as I do. When you have these things flat, they're very present. They have a nice pleasing top end. And the one thing you can tell with a good mic or not is if it takes EQ well. How far can you push that top end before it falls apart? You could push this one around. The benefit here, having a low pass on these things. This is a gentle cut, but what it does is it kind of emulates like having my R88 above the kit. It felt like a ribbon, a darker ribbon on top. The transients were under control. It wasn't as pokey when it came out, but you're a studio and you have a ton of different kits coming in with different cymbal types. I have a gospel group coming in this weekend. These are gonna be my overheads because I don't know what cymbals they're bringing. And there's gonna be 3 different drummers for this grouping of songs, and each one of them is gonna have a little bit of a different setup. So being able to switch that high pass in to accommodate for different cymbals and to just print it into the track that way. I love to work like that. These things blew my mind. The other thing about these, if you like the sound of the last few Foo Fighter records, this gets you pretty darn close. We weren't trying to go for that tone, but it just fell into place. It was so easy. Anyway, guys, I freaking love these mics. I already have a few churches who are interested in purchasing these just because I showed them how cool they were on grand piano on stage. The engineer in me and the problem solver in me loves this mic. Being able to reach out with Trent and getting to know like the company itself, really cool people, and people who just like to make music and do it well and who are proud of their work. I'm always stoked to work with that. So if you guys are interested in anything like this, I'll put links down below. Please reach out to Luke if you want him to drum on any of your projects. I'll put his contact down below. For those interested, we did take drum samples of this session. So if you're into that kind of bombastic-y sound, that will be available on the Patreon here shortly. As always, guys, I'm Resident Loser Jeremy. I'll see you in the next one.